well, I appreciate all of you being here. We'll call our meeting to order, our work session for September the 12th. And again, we appreciate you being with us. At the beginning of our meetings, we like to have a moment of silence, and I'll invite you to join with us, please. Thank you. With that, excuse me, we have a student from James M. Brown that's going to lead us in the pledge. So will you introduce her?
Yes, sir, I will. This is Miss Aaliyah Norton, and she's going to lead us in our pledge, and then we'll do our presentation next.
So if you would join us in the pledge, please. Okay. I told her, let her stand over this way a little bit, so she'll be sure she's on camera. She's a celebrity. Okay.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
We also brought Miss Aaliyah here today because she was Oconee County's summer reading champion this year at the public library, and she was able to tell them what she won all week. So she is very excited for all the reading that she did over the summer and turned that into the public library, and now she gets to celebrate with a week. So we're very proud of her. And then we also want to highlight two of our pre-K teachers. So I will have them come up to the front, please. We are so excited at James M. Brown Elementary to have received a third program for pre-K at the very last minute. And we were okay with that because that meant that we got at least an additional 20 other kids to be able to experience 4K. And our thoughts were 180 days in public education rather than at home was fantastic. So we also want to highlight the two teachers that we have who are doing a tremendous job in that classroom, and that is Miss Jessica Reed Williams and Miss Tasha Woody. So we can't thank them enough for all their work.
We do have, if y'all slide back over, we'll get a, Mr. Handy might take a snap picture and, okay, so Jessica. And Aaliyah. We're proud of all three of them and get some social media. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right, with that, then we'll move on for tonight's agenda. If we can get a motion to approve the September 12 work session agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the work session agenda for September 12th, 2016.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Anybody see anything they want to adjust? Hearing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. The next part is public comment session. We have a chance for anybody to come up and speak to the board. You were supposed to sign up, and we didn't have anybody sign up, but is there anyone who wants to address the board on any particular issue related to our agenda of the district? Okay, and I think we'll address most of this later on, so thank you. Dr. Thorsland.
Yes, sir. To start, I've got two policies that this is the time of year when the South Carolina School Boards Association sends its recommended policy changes out, and we've been looking at those over the past couple of weeks, and we have a quite a few on the agenda tonight that we would like to bring to your attention and recommend some changes to, and two of them that deal with board meetings are in my section here. So if you'll look at policy BEC, Ms. Moore has that pulled up, and the only addition to this is in red there. It simply says that no decision can be made on something discussed in executive session unless it was on the board agenda. This is not out of our current practice. It just puts in policy what we already do anyway. You never make a decision on something that was discussed in executive session unless it's on the board agenda. So it's not a major change as far as our practice. It just puts it in policy. And then the second part deals with the board agenda and how the board agenda is set. And it just adds that the board agenda, there can be recommendations for the board agenda made not only by board members or school district staff members, but also it could be made by the public. So if a parent wanted something added to the board agenda, they could bring that to the district office or speak to a board member, and then it does clarify that as superintendent and board chairman, that would be our job to determine whether that recommendation would be placed on the board agenda or not. But it just adds that the public could make a suggestion for the board agenda. So those two changes are recommended, and then there's some of the legal references at the bottom of those policies that have been updated as well. And that's just for your consideration, and we would possibly make first reading on those policies next week, and then final reading, the second reading would be in October if you so desire to make these changes. Any questions about those? Those are pretty straightforward. And then Mr. Edgerton will come up in just a minute, and I want to just clarify, I think most everybody knows, I think, why the audience is full tonight. And I did, before he speaks, and not to steal any thunder, but I just kind of want to explain, I guess, my role in this. I expressed to you earlier and talked to the principals about just a desire to see the foreign language curriculum in our district expanded. And I still maintain that desire. I think it's important. Right now, what we offer in our county is essentially minimum requirements for students going to four-year colleges. We, in the last 2 years anyway, have not given an AP exam in a foreign language. So we essentially offer 3 years of a foreign language once a student gets to high school. Now in the West Oak area, and we've had a Spanish teacher at West Oak Middle for a number of years, and in the last couple of years we've had some Chinese instruction at Seneca Middle. But outside of those two scenarios, we've not had foreign language instruction. It has changed somewhat this year, but I did say I wanted to see it pushed down to the elementary school. And I met with the camp teachers or related arts teachers, depending on how it's used different ways in different schools, and expressed that I didn't want the teachers, the art, music, PE teachers, to hear that the district was thinking about doing something. I thought it was best if I said, here's what I'm thinking. I do want you to be aware that these conversations are going on. And I just expressed that I wanted to find a way for foreign language to be pushed down even into the elementary schools. And I've given you a schedule here, just a typical elementary schedule that I put on and it happened to be Ravenel second grade simply because Ms. Henderson answered the phone when I was calling to get an example. And it just gives you kind of an idea of what an elementary school student does every day. And you see here there's 15-minute homeroom. There is a target time there at Ravenel, and this, again, is second grade there. But that's when they do something called RIT band instruction, which is based on the MAP test, where students have strengths and weaknesses. But they also do their pull-outs during that time. So if a kid was getting speech therapy or pulled out, for resource, that might happen during that time period. And then there's related arts, and that's kind of what we're talking about here, and that's a 45-minute period from 9:05 to 9:50. And that's typically in our elementary schools, been a 5-day rotation, and we do art, music, PE, and you see I've got Spanish in there because Ravenel is piloting a Spanish program this year, but that's more commonly library or computers on that 5th day. All of our schools are fairly consistent with the art, music, and PE taking 4 of those days, PE having 2 of the days. And that is legislated, that PE is supposed to have 2 days. There's a little caveat there with funding that we could discuss. But that 45-minute period, so a student now, typically coming into the school district, in the majority of our elementary schools would have 45 minutes of instruction once a week in art, in music, and twice a week in PE, K through 5. So that's what they would get in their elementary school career. Then when it gets to middle school and high school, it's more student choice, and they can get, pretty much everyday instruction in those disciplines if they want to. But some students, may choose visual arts, some may choose band, some may choose chorus, some may choose to double up in PE and take more PE. So it just depends on the students' wishes largely when they get to middle school and high school.
May I ask, just,
Sure.
But, so I didn't realize that the art and the music were that small in a week's instruction. These teachers who put on arts programs, this is the only amount of time they have instruction?
Not necessarily. It is as far as instruction for...
Yes, it is.
Let me finish, please. It is as far as seeing every child in the school. However, the chorus performance that you see, some of you come to the chorus performance, that is oftentimes a group of students who might stay after school or come early where they have extra. So many of the elementary schools will have a chorus that consists of students who show extra skill in that area, or they just have a desire to do it more, so they may stay after school. As far as seeing every student in the school, this time is kind of the limit. But the some of the drama programs, the chorus program, the all-county chorus, they do get additional time to practice. Now, I guess as far as visual arts goes, there may be some art clubs out there, I don't know, but for the most part, seeing each homeroom, they see them this 45 minutes. So when I had that conversation, I did have the conversation, and this is what has caused the emails and the calls that you've gotten, that there is a finite amount of time in an instructional day, and there's a finite amount of money in the budget. And my challenge was simply, I would like to explore ways to push foreign language down to the elementary school. Never have I said foreign language is more important than the arts. Never have I said I want to take the arts out of. But it could be that due to time constraints, I said it's possible that there would have to be some give and take on time in the schedule. Not just the arts necessarily. I know Ms. Robertson, who's here tonight, she's using, I think, some of that Target, James Brown's version of that Target time, to do some foreign language instruction at James and Brown this year. So we do have some schools that are piloting elementary school foreign language in multiple ways. Ravenel and Fair Oak happen to be doing it in one way, using that 5th day of the related arts instruction. James and Brown is doing some in that Target time, that RIP band instruction, enrichment time. Orchard Park is using an online option for foreign language instruction. They are using Rosetta Stone. They put a significant amount of monetary investment in that through their Title I funding. So there are options that don't affect the related arts schedule at all as far as the fine arts, art and music. But I did say, that was a possibility if the district decided, and when I say district, that's not necessarily me or necessarily just you, although you certainly could make that decision as a board, but that would mean, principals, teachers, that would be a decision that would be vetted. So I think that got exaggerated because some of the emails I've gotten and some of the letters you've gotten have been greatly exaggerated. And, but I do own that I did meet and I did have that conversation, and that's created some angst, deservedly so. I don't begrudge that at all, but I did want you just to kind of know what our elementary schedule looked like, and go from there. And again, that's not taking anything away from any of our fine arts programs, because our fine arts programs are top quality, and I would dare say we probably do more certainly with elementary fine arts than many of the neighboring districts.
We're known for that.
Well, Dr. Thorson, what, and this simple question may be a simple answer, but if this is working well at Ravenel, what about implementing this type schedule district-wide?
It's very possible.
Then it wouldn't affect the arts?
It is very possible, and the schedule at Ravenel, Fair Oak, James Brown, and Orchard Park all started this August. So, and I did say there may be ways to do it without affecting that. I wanted to gather information. So I don't have a plan for how we're going to implement fine arts. I mean, how we're going to implement foreign language. There's not a timeline per se. I simply want us to do a better job with foreign language. Not taking anything away from the teachers of foreign language, I just don't think we do enough with it.
Okay, now that we kind of playing with this can of worms.
Sure.
I know that West Oak Middle School has had Spanish at middle school level for a good while. Do any of our other middle schools have foreign language?
For 2 years, well, last year and then this year, Seneca Middle has had a small amount of the Chinese instruction that we've had through that program, where we essentially get a teacher from China who comes here and instructs our students.
Well, I'm just saying, I realize we're not in any kind of decision-making situation, but we are talking. As a former foreign language teacher of a lot of years, if I were the goddess of foreign language instruction, I would start from the high school and back it back down through the middle school.
Oh, no, I agree wholeheartedly.
And then, just kind of
No,
not have a gap.
I do think we need to do that. Mr. Dixon has expressed an interest in hiring a foreign language teacher, and that would be a logical way to start. However, I will say that for students to really learn a foreign language, I think the earlier they're exposed to it, the better.
Conversationally, not
Conversationally.
not structured.
Agreed. But
Quite.
it would be great for the students who want to, which is what we do right now. After elementary school, students can specialize in their particular interest area. And it would be nice that if a student really wanted to, that we would have the offerings available so that they could become fluent as well as, know the structure of the language, like you say, that they learn in high school. So for that to happen, I think we would need to offer it earlier.
How many additional teachers would it take to implement a program similar to Ravenel's in district-wide? Just off the top of your head, right?
What Ravenel and Fair Oak are doing right now is they're doing some computer-based instruction. It is directed by a teacher, but it's not a certified teacher. So
Certified in language.
they're not certified at all.
Period.
It's not a certified teacher. However, it's an individual who knows Spanish in those two cases at Fair Oak and Ravenel. So they're not giving grades. It's simply an exposure to. So, going to be a lot of, singing and different things like that to help cue the students to learn things.
If we, and not knowing the cost, but I think if we implemented a new program and went to county council and said, we need this amount of money to do this, and it all went to the classroom, they may very well support that. But I'd just like to see what the cost would be if we started with something like this and maybe expanded into all the middle schools,
Right.
And, then I wouldn't,
For middle schools, it would have to be a certified
Oh, yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
And that should be able to happen within the existing allocation that, Mr. Hamby works on each year with the middle school principals.
I think it's worth exploring that.
And Ravenel and Fair Oak were able to implement this in their schedule without, adding to the budget, because they used an existing allocation for what we call academic assistance. And they were able to hire a non-certified employee to come in and lead the Spanish instruction in those two schools. So it is very possible. If that works out well and we get good reviews from those two schools, that is an option that
Of course, that
could be
can be done
considered.
also with advanced students from a high school going over, like teacher cadet kids do.
Could be.
We have a lot of,
Could be.
anyway, I know we can't
Could be.
Mike,
fix it all.
following up on what Jerry said, I think foreign language is extremely important, and I think we need to work to find ways to get it into the middle school and the elementary school, but not at the expense of any other proven program that we have in place.
Sure.
That's simply my feeling on that. I'm very much in favor of doing it, but let's do it over and above what we have in place now.
In this elementary school schedule, when do your gifted and talented students, are they in that target time, or do they get pulled out of their
Second grade
math?
won't have it. That's-
No, I mean
Second grade,
second
but
graders did, they
if
weren't
this was
identified
a
that early,
fourth grade-
but in any elementary
It's
schedule.
different in different schools, but I guess what I'd say maybe the best case scenario is when that particular grade level is doing math, for example. They may regroup their homerooms so that the GT math students go with one teacher who is endorsed in GT, and that leaves a lesser number of students to then be divided out amongst the remainder of the teachers. So often it would happen within that time that's labeled instructional time here.
Okay.
That's probably the best model that we have right now. It's not always done like that. There are some schools that have just a pull-out time for GT, and they have a group that stays together for all of their instruction in GT. But most of our schools do kind of a regrouping during those math and ELA times.
So really, you're talking about just doing kind of brainstorming and idea gathering.
Absolutely.
At this point,
Yep.
and that's all.
Anybody else have any comments? I think we all, a lot of us have worked in the schools and spent many years building the fine arts programs we have, and as Mr. Harrigan said, we don't want to do anything to take away from that, but there is a need for the foreign language too, so. And
So,
yeah,
Mr. Edgerton.
Edgerton, there you go.
Well, thank you for allowing me to come and speak today on behalf of the arts programs. I didn't mean for this to be any kind of an adversarial kind of situation. Actually, last year I was at a couple board meetings and I noticed that a couple of high schools, I think Mr. Roberts was here one time, and Mr. Kruzberger, and they spoke about their instructional programs. And I thought it might be a good time to do that with the arts. So I really have a PowerPoint I was going to take you through. Worked earlier.
It'll come up. It just,
I call it the art of success. If you want an opportunity to see value-added, cost-effective public education in the right place at the right time. So you guys can see this thing?
yeah, we can. And it'll come up there in a second. We're splitting an HDMI feed like 8 ways, so it takes a minute for it to get everywhere.
It is up here.
Is that one even on?
It's on earlier, but it doesn't. You go ahead, they can see that one, they've got the board has it.
Oh, you guys can see.
We can
Yeah,
see
they
it. We
have
can
it.
see it.
All right, you can see the next one.
I think this clicker will work.
Oh,
You can-
do you mind doing it?
No, I don't.
That'd be better. Recognize this guy? Next slide. How about this guy? Sure. I assume some of you know who that is. Next slide. Okay, what if I tell you that these two are the Michelangelo and Leonardo of their time in their industry? Ever wonder how people like these guys become people like these guys? Next slide. Well, for them, it's the year 1955. They were both born in 1955. And everybody that's anybody, next slide. Everybody that's anybody in the personal computer industry was born within 3 years of that time. You had to be in the right place at the right time. And so one of the most important parts of opportunity is right place, right time. And Bill Gates, Stephen Jobs are definitely friends of opportunity. Here's another friend of opportunity. You might recognize him?
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan, very good. You know, his story was born in 1963, but my guess is if he had been born in 1953, we would have never heard of him. Let's see the next one. How did he become Michael Jordan? Well, he was born in 1963 in North Carolina. And those are both critical components of success, time and place. Next. If he had been born in 1953 and he had gone to the University of North Carolina at that time, in 1971, the school had a couple of black players, but they weren't featured players. By 1981, the opportunity was very different for him. If he had been born in Texas, he might not have had the chance to go to the University of North Carolina and play basketball. So time and place are important components of opportunity. Next. So let's see how opportunity is resonating among some of our former students and how through them it's resonating across the city. Next slide. First, let's meet our own Leonardo and Michelangelo. I think some of you know. And I say that without any exaggeration whatsoever. Next slide. James Brown, Bonnie, go back one now. James Brown and Bonnie Rushlow, in their time here, their visionary leadership made this the place and has made the last 30 years the time for opportunity that is perhaps unparalleled in the state of South Carolina, maybe in the Southeast, for a school district our size and what we can offer. This is truly the golden age of the arts in Oconee County. It's not a renaissance because there was no precedent for this. And I think we all know that Mr. Brown and Ms. Rushlow worked very hard to change this through leadership and their commitment and perseverance. Next. And it's not a coincidence that we won the Elizabeth O'Neill Burner Award in the 1990s because Ms. Rushlow had been installed as a fine arts coordinator by the late 80s. It stands today, I think it's here in the offices, and it stands as a testament, a symbol of their visionary leadership and their commitment, their perseverance, their determination, their beliefs. And there are more powerful symbols yet to see to show that. Next. Now, in the meeting that was kind of mentioned here earlier, there were 3 directives or questions that our people were asked to respond to. The first is to define our programs. What should art experience look like and survive or thrive? So I'll try to speak to those 3 as we go along. First, I want to point out the profile of the South Carolina graduate. Now, this is for all high school graduates. And what I'll point out is on the right side, those are some of the standards, some of the key phrases, some of the things they're looking for in graduates, in all instructional programs, in all of our graduates. Those are some of the things they're looking for. Creativity, innovation, media, technology, multiple languages, that's one. Critical thinking, and others. Next. Exhibit A, Jason Lowe. Jason is a Oconee County born graduate. He now lives in Atlanta. If you recognize any of those logos on the bottom, he works with companies like that. He's a graphic designer. Grew up right here, went to Auburn University, and is now a professional. That's a recent photo of he and his wife and son. Next slide. Kim Vu, also born right here. Some of you may know the story of the Vus. Born right here, went through school here, went to Florida to the Ringling School of Art and Design. He started out in the West Coast. He worked for ESPN, that's the bottom right. On the bottom left, he eventually worked his way up to Google. He now works at Droga 5, and you've probably never heard of Droga 5, but you've probably seen a ton of their work on TV. They're the world's #1 ad agency in 2016. And he's a senior creative person with them. Next. Underneath each of these, I put a few key phrases from the profile that I think might relate to those jobs. Elizabeth Bost, I think we might recognize Ms. Bost, also a Oconee graduate, also gainfully employed and recommitting to her community with her art, as well as Lisa Next. Emmanuel Wilson's a local painter and muralist. You see some of his work there. Next. Kate Folio, she lives in Atlanta now. She's also a painter. Each of these is a painting. They're about 3 to 5 feet. They're very large. She's also a painter, also born and raised, graduate of Oconee County School. Next. Ben McDonald, each of the people that we're seeing are all Oconee County people. You may recognize some of those things. He's worked for Tigertown Graphics. He's also worked for graphics at Blue Mountain and another company. He went to Anderson University. Those are some of his works. Stan DeBose, I think you might recognize Mr. DeBose, and Tina Hunt, a couple more of our graduates. Next. Dr. Sam Ingram, everybody know Dr. Sam Ingram? Clemson University. He's the chair of the Graphic Communications Program. You can see in 2014, he was named Graphics Communication Professor of the Year. So he's a man of certain standing. And I want to say here now, I apologize to many of you, not to David. I'm a Gamecock. I'm not just here to shill the Tigers. I'm not here to shill the Tigers. I say this because it is a great program. I've sent a lot of my kids there. It's a terrific program. He runs a great program there. Kids come out of that program in 4 years, and they have a 100% placement rate at about $70,000 a year coming out of college. Next slide. This is a quote from him. Employers of our graduates have expectations that GC graphic communications graduates will have a working language of foundations provided by K-12 arts education. And I highlighted a few other terms. Now that's all from him, but they all relate to that South Carolina profile, I think. Next slide. Kelly Derrick Gambino, and you see that she's worked for the Kellogg Company in Michigan. And she talks there at length about how her experience in art class helped her develop the skills that have put her in a position to have that healthcare benefits administrator job. Next slide. Avis Ellis. Avis here. Avis, Allie Petrie. Avis is at West Oak Middle School. I'm sure you're familiar with Avis, doing a great job over there. A local girl as well. Allie Petrie is now an art teacher in Richland District 1. That's her on the bottom there. Next. This is pretty topical. I don't know if you saw, I think it was today or yesterday, Clemson announced that they had raised $1 billion. Did you see that and met that target? The piece on the right there was done by Weatherly White. She now works for Clemson in their graphics program. So that piece that you see on the right is part of the information they put out toward their goals. So we have a former grad who's working over there doing that. She also has worked for Procter & Gamble, and she worked at one time for Tigertown Graphics. So if you've ever seen any of those shirts on the bottom, they were designed by her, another Oconee graduate. Next. Bethany Pipton, professor of art at Anderson University. Next. All right, I know I've been showing a lot of art people, so I'll try to slip a few others in as well. This is Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Kirk Griffith, the first person in his family to graduate from college. He was an art major in college, and he talks at length there about how art separated him, even in his field, from many of the others, in his ability to visualize and conceptualize how the leader of the battle could see a battle unfolding and so forth, and how that separated him from many of the others. Next slide. Dr. Tyler Loftus, also a Oconee County graduate, is now a surgeon in Florida. He sent me this, as you can see there, a substantial body of evidence to suggest that art and music have the unique ability to connect young learners, expand their vision of the world. That's part of our global perspective and some other terms that we saw there. And more, he talks at the bottom about how an art class is where he learned many of the principles that he applies to the way he deals with his medical practice now, at the bottom there. Christy Smith Garrett, she's an art teacher in Pickens County. Next. A brief detour. Next. This is Travis Frady. I'm sure some of you know Travis Frady, Wayne and Brenda Frady. This is their son. Anybody familiar with country music television, CMT? If you've watched any CMT, you've probably seen many things that Travis Frady produced, including the shows that you see there and the singers that you see there. I think that's Tim McGraw and I think the one on the right. So if you've seen their music videos, Travis Frady does that. Next. Jason Becknell. He's in Atlanta, you watch the news, you might be watching news produced by one of our graduates, Jason Beckman, right there. Next. Listen to the radio locally, might know Jazzy Joe, and another one of our graduates. And finally, Steve Daniels is an Emmy-winning filmmaker. Now sadly, each of these gentlemen were in a program that we used to have that we cut. Opportunity lost. Next. Next. Stephen Barton, Boston, Massachusetts, graphic designer. Do you ever wonder who designs boxes that they put paper in and stuff like that? Carly Porter, art historian, currently at Virginia Commonwealth. She's been at Furman University. Next. Charles Deal. Charles has his own architectural firm in New York City. The skyscraper on the left he designed. There he is in a couple of shots with more recent Oconee students as he was showing them around what he does. Beth Gankus, project coordinator. She's a graphic communications graduate at Clemson University. There have been several, I haven't mentioned them all. Mallory Wetherill, ceramics, Philadelphia. Next. Here's a nice one. Archaeologist. Some of you might have been in school with Josh Fletcher. On the right side, you see where it says City to Dig Signs for Gadsden's Wharf. Are you familiar with that? Gadsden's Wharf is the Ellis Island for people who came from Africa, as Ellis Island is from Europe. And it's being built in Charleston. And Josh Fletcher is the lead archaeologist on that dig as they're trying to uncover exactly where it was to rebuild that. He's also an Oconee County graduate. He's a Clemson graduate as well as USC. Felicia Greenlee, textiles. Felicia told me that she can be at her house and design textiles, hit a button on her computer, send it to a factory anywhere on the planet, and see it in TJ Maxx in about a month on the shelf. Next. She's a Clemson graduate. Jennifer Williams Bueno, glass blower. She and her husband are considered two of the top in the United States, I think. Next. Vince Coleman is a performance artist. He's been and worked in Chicago, New York. I think he's back in Chicago now. Next. Jenny Knight, graphic designer in Wisconsin. Next. Hillary Fry, jewelry, painter. If you went to Artist Only Green this year, you might have seen Hillary there. She came back with that. So she's giving back to this community. Next. Everyone who designs paper cups and the designs on the outside, Amanda Lott, one of our own. She works for International Paper Company. She works right here in Clemson, actually. She went to Anderson University where she got a graphics degree. They have a great program there, a smaller school. They have a great program there. We've got a lot of kids go through that. All of those are designs that she's done, so if you've seen any of those cups, Oconee County. If you heard of the X-Men, Bill Keeter has actually worked on the X-Men. Comics on the right are some of his own. Those are some of his web-page designs for the state of South Carolina. I've heard of the Interstate 73 thing, maybe. Next. Lauren Love, graphic design in Kentucky. Next. Rob McComber in Utah. If you've heard of Dave Matthews, Madonna, Gatorade, any of those are some of his web designs. Next. While our county has proposed cutting back, I didn't want to be adversarial, I'm not going to be, but we have talked about, we've at least put it out there that we perhaps cut back or diminish a program. I wanted to point out that Greenville County is doing exactly the opposite. These are very recent articles, front page articles in the Greenville News. Next. We've had some former students, their diverse work, wide range of media and fields stretching into literally every corner of the country and actually beyond. Impact it's had on their lives, their families, their communities. These grads are real living, breathing examples of how this visionary leadership of Mr. Brown, Ms. Rushlow are playing out over a long period of time, many, many years. All right, it's a different form of data that we like to talk about now, but it is data, I would say. Next. How we defined our programs. Our programs have been defined for quite a while. Going back to Bonnie Rushlow, we worked to create a standards-based, state and national standards-based curriculum K-12, which we've worked on, refined several times at Summer Institute and other places. And that's been around for a long time. And Dr. Thorsland, in fact, with us at one point, several years ago, when Dr. Warner was here, and we were hashing out budgets at one time. We talked about the curriculum at that time. So we've had a curriculum here in place for quite some time. So that was one of the things we were asked. Have we shown what arts experience should look like? I think we've shown that up and down the halls. I think we've shown that at Duke Power. I think we've shown it in this today a little bit. And I think we could bring more of these kinds of examples as well, but I think we've done that. Have we shown that they're not just simply surviving, but they're thriving? And I'm going to say yes. And I hope you agree with that. Have we shown them to be cost effective? And I really want to hit home with this, because every kid that you've seen there went through a strand and attendance zone where they had 3 art teachers. That's all we've committed to this. We have 1 in an elementary school, we have 1 in a middle school, we have 1 in a high school. And there are other high schools in the state the size of ours that have 2 art teachers, not unusual at all. Daniel High School is not much larger than ours, and they have 2 art teachers full-time. And I'm not lobbying for more, thinning out my herd for me. I enjoy having them all to myself. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying it's pretty cost effective, 3 people. And this is the results. Have we shown that they add value? I hope so. I hope we've done that. Have we shown our classrooms for 30 years that produce students that meet the goals? Let's see that next slide. And there they are again, the ones on the right. And I think if you think about the ones I just showed you, and you think about what's up there behind you, to develop responsible, productive citizens who are lifelong learners. These people are not where they are without being lifelong learners. And we can't fully take credit for what they've achieved. In fact, in many ways, we don't deserve much credit at all. But we were there with an opportunity for them to find the things that their passion led them to. And we don't want to lose that. That's really what we're talking about. Next. I have a little pop quiz for you. Anybody know who said that?
Red Edgerton.
Come on now. Listen. Anybody know who said it? Next slide. And she said it Friday in this county. When I came here 30 years ago, and I'm going to be really honest with you. I have to tell David this. David's one of my first students I see back there. 30 years ago, I came here for 1 year. I'd grown up primarily in the city, in Columbia. I lived in Spartanburg and Dallas, Texas. And I came here fully intending to be here while I look for a good job. And I'm in my 31st year. It's easy when you come into a new situation to have preconceived notions of what it would be like. And I had that. And I had to overcome that. And I think sometimes we come into a situation where we have preconceptions. We have an idea of what needs to happen there before we do the time it takes to find out what's going on there for real. And I came here at the right time myself. I came here at the right place. And this community has been good to me and good for me. Now my time is short. I'm not up here about me. I'll be gone. If you eliminated elementary school altogether, it wouldn't affect me. But it's going to affect these kids. It's going to keep many kids from the opportunity that it's really their passion and finding their passion. That goes back to all the things that we've talked about. And so I've heard a lot tonight. I didn't want to get into any kind of adversarial thing, and I hope I've done that. I've tried to. But I do think the community needs to hear, we heard some of that before I got up, that the board can put an end to all of these phone calls and all of these emails by simply saying, what you started saying tonight. We're going to hold off on this. We don't have a November deadline, which was mentioned. And we don't have to get these answers by November and so forth. There was discussion of not hiring art teachers back, but hiring foreign language teachers if they left. That is correct. We need to put an end to that as a dialogue that's out there. Particularly, we didn't mention Northside Elementary, but currently Northside Elementary kids are seeing 12 days of art and 180 days of school, some as few as 12 days. And I think it's not just art, I think it's music and other areas. So it's not possible for every one of us and the parents and all the stakeholders to have that model and hear this, even if it had nothing to do with that. You and I spoke, and I understand that. But it's impossible to hear this kind of dialogue coming out with that model out there in an elementary school and not be concerned. And that's really what brought me here tonight. I appreciate your bearing with me and allowing me to share this with you tonight. If you don't have any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you. Appreciate you being willing. Larry, we appreciate the presentation. You did an outstanding job as always, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think the board fully supports the arts and the programs, and we'll certainly keep all of that in mind as we go forward with discussions with the administration. So, but thank you for being with, thank all of you for being with. I hope your year started well and it continues well. We have a good year, so thank you for what you do every day too.
Thank you,
And-
it's got a lot better right now.
And you're welcome to stay the rest of the meeting now. You need to come more often and see what goes on. Okay, well, with that, Dr. Thorson, anything else?
Move on to Mr. Hamby.
All right, Mr. Hamby, we'll move on to you.
Okay, you all have the financial report for August, and after we see if there are any questions about that,
No, it's fine, it's fine.
I was going to update you on our visit to the county council meeting, just to give you a regular budget update, but we'll see if there are any questions about the financial report before we head into that, if that's okay. Mr. Lee, have a question?
Just waiting on it to come up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not on that screen.
I got curious about yellow folder, but then I saw what it is.
I turned our screen off because it's wobbling too much, it's making me dizzy.
Yeah, mine is too. I don't know
They're
what's
all
on.
on there. We just have.
And we
I
have,
have
I don't know
my
what the
laptop.
sound issue is either. I tried to come in here when Ms. Sanders mentioned it to me, and I'm not advanced enough to fix it evidently. So we'll get that worked on.
Here we go. There we go.
Yes, it's coming. Yeah. There we are.
We've got it, finally.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions? I know you've read this prior to tonight's meeting. It's not something we're just looking at for the first time.
I think it's pretty typical at the beginning of the year, you know.
And the yellow folder that Ms. Bales did reference is, if you've ever been in our basement, it's a storage vault for old records, and that was, yellow folder is helping us digitize all of our old paper records, in special ed in particular, and that was a monumentous task. And there's about, I think I saw an email for 60.
Yeah, well, there's
File
more than that, because we've
cabinets.
already given some of them away, but
Right.
there's about 65 cabinets that are available for
That they emptied
schools
in their
that
scanning.
need them.
Wow.
Is this the right time for me to ask about the insurance that we have? I know the school board association, they offer the insurance. And I've got a theory on some of the things they do, but I won't get into that. I just wonder, the insurance that we have, I'm assuming, and I guess that it is a lot better price that we get than what we can get through the school board association.
That's true. We actually have, for several years, at least since I've been in the district, which is 11 plus years now, we go through an insurance broker who actually solicits quotes for our insurance, and that would be workers' comp as well as, property, casualty, all those. And we do get a better price than we used to get with School Board's Insurance Trust. And as I understand it, School Board's Insurance Trust could actually submit a price to our, but they refuse. In many cases, I know they refused to give us a quote on workers' comp a few years ago. And I think most school districts that use the School Board's Insurance Trust don't solicit bids. That is exempt in the code, so you don't have to bid that out. And I just think that's bad practice. When you're talking about millions of dollars, and it really is, if you add workers' comp and the property and casualty and all that, we're talking 7 figures every year. When you're talking about that much money, you have to get multiple prices, I think. And
I agree.
we choose to do that, and we feel like we get a better product and cheaper coverage.
I wasn't aware that they would not give us a quote. I mean,
Well, and I'm,
Smart business to me.
I know they have refused to give us quotes on certain policies in certain years. Now, they may, if,
I can check with Scott.
We can check
to
with-
see, but I don't-
with,
He's not mentioned it or said anything about it in the process.
but I think most of the time, school districts just call them, they write a policy, and that's that, and we just,
And they just accept what they,
To get the bill.
Yeah, they take it
Mr.
as it
Mayor,
is.
we're still working with Stan Picorni. He was working with us whenever you were the superintendent.
yes.
yeah, he's with a different company now.
Yes, he has a different company.
Any other questions? Anything on the budget? Okay, what else? As always, we ask we're on track for this time of year.
We are,
How
and
about-
and there's a lot of things that you pay in July for the year, licenses and renewals and things, so it takes a pretty good bit at the beginning, but it'll be on track.
But income from the taxes and so on, not
None
yet. None yet.
None yet.
That's why we have to have a fund balance, is to operate during the times
So the
we're
check don't
not.
bounce.
Yeah, your check just don't bounce.
Check that bounce when you got. But speaking of that, that is sort of a good segue into the next part. Dr. Thorsland and Ms. Moore and I attended the county council meeting last Tuesday because we saw that, we were going to see the assessor's recommendation for millage. And we are very appreciative of county council leaving. As we've discussed for the last 4 years, we've sent a flat millage rate over there. It's been 110.1, and we have been told the way to increase revenue is increase the value of a mill, and we work together through the partnerships like the Workforce Development Center and those things to do that. Well, this year it was a good year. The value of the mill increased, and we also came in with a larger than anticipated number based on last year's number from Duke Power. Our Duke Power revenue went up. The county's actually went down a little bit based on the code. I don't know the full term for it, but based on the way they allocate the taxes. So we gained about $730,000 from that. Then with the increased value of a mill, we are going to actually have, what's that number?
439.
$439,000 more in the budget than we requested, which will help with the fund balance, which had gotten down to 20.1% when, policy calls to have at least 20%. So we estimated it was going to go down that far. It didn't quite go down that much because we didn't have to dip into it like we had at first
But
anticipated.
as expenditures go up, that 20%
The minimum we got to
called
keep.
for number
Right.
goes up as well.
Right.
So if we don't add some to the fund balance each year, we will fall below that 20% line. And I'm sorry to interrupt,
You're right.
but over the past 6 years, our fund balance has decreased from 26 million to about 20 million. So we've been spending into the fund balance. It's wonderful for us to be able to put some of that money back to keep our financial situation healthy. So we're not planning to spend that $439,000. We're planning to put it back to replace some of the money we've spent over the past few years.
That we hope we put some other back too, if we come in under what we have estimated for the budget. So that was good news, and we appreciate their support with that. It was a 5-0 vote, so we're excited.
Good.
Okay, our next, you see some recommended changes to elementary attendance areas to improve bus efficiency. This is something that Sammy Grant and Evie Hughes have been working on in our office to, we actually have several routes, and a lot of these are here, where on one side of the road, it's one elementary school, and on the other side of the road, it's a different elementary school. If you have an even numbered address, you go to Kiwi. If you have an odd number address, you go to Wahala and that. And this is trying to clean those up. Nobody will change for high school. We have the high school attendance areas, the 3 main attendance areas, middle school, and then we have, in Seneca, we have a Ravenel, a Northside, and a Blue Ridge area, and so forth. So these are just tweaking the elementary attendance areas to what makes sense. Sammy has worked with the county on the map and who we have there. We would grandfather in the kids who are currently attending an elementary school and continue to get them there. We just want to be able to put it on the record that if you've got a 3-year-old, when they get to kindergarten, then they're going to be going to this elementary school. So it's going to take us several years unless people choose to change to get out of this business. But these are the changes that Evie and Sammy have marked on the map. I have an actual map in the boardroom if you want to see them, and the kids that are affected, because we have names on there. We're definitely talking about less than 75 students, probably closer to 50. So we would ask that you approve these changes based on Sammy's recommendation as we go through and we get that for a vote coming up next time.
I'll do it next week.
Yes, sir. And then again. Next, we have, you had asked when we renewed the food services contract, you all had asked about some meal count information. And so Scott Hood from Sodexo provided this information, and we just took October so we could be consistent now. On your handout, you can see that the number of serving days in the month varied, but the meals per day is, to me, one of the key numbers, so we can see the average. And we've sort of gone, we were up and then we were down, and now we're heading back up. And one of the things that we're doing this year is, like when we have a principal meeting on Wednesday, they will be trying out some of the new food items for the principals before they're going into the cafeteria with the kids. So they're going to allow, the principals are going to eat the same items that the students have in that. So we'll start that on Wednesday. But these are the numbers that we have.
The meals per day, are those breakfast and lunch?
It is. It is.
It takes 3 breakfasts to count as 2 lunches.
Right.
Or
And
2 meals.
2 meals.
So
And then you got to have the
there's a
3
formula.
items, and they can combine a la carte to add that up. But so that's why it's more than kids we have.
But it would be an apples to apples comparison between it's the same formula that's been applied
Right,
each
for
of
all
those
those
5
years.
years.
Now, this includes full pay, reduced.
This is everything, yes, ma'am.
That's interesting.
Does it help in that count to increase it though, because we've got some of the title schools that everybody gets free breakfast or free lunch?
Yes.
But that started several years ago.
Right.
We've been doing that for-
It's been phased in. Now we're, most elementary schools have that. We also have, with our after-school care, the elementary schools have dinner, a third meal in the afternoon, so the numbers should go up. When we do this next year and this time, we should see an increase in that. So they worked that through the YMCA and that. Had a very productive summer with the camps and the athletic programs and the band practice and that, trying to feed as many folks as they could over the summer as well. So I thought that was a good number. That you all
Any
asked for.
questions, Ms. Tanby? Okay.
And then we have our policies from the School Board Association recommendations. The first one is policy JFB, school choice. The biggest change is taking out page 2. We're striking all that information because there's no longer the school choice with the Title I schools and that, if you had a certain rating and those kind of things. So that's not applicable anymore. And then the other change to this one is on page 3 in red, where the Elementary and Secondary Education Act has been changed to Every Student Succeed Act, and so it's updated the legal references. So nothing really significant on that as far as our changes. Parents' rights and responsibilities, KBB. This is mainly talking about with special education and when our students who are 18 and above, who would technically be considered a legal adult, if they are not capable of making a decision, they can designate their parent or guardian to be making the educational decisions when we serve them until they're 21 and come through. And then they changed a couple of words, changed government to law, and then again, legal references along the same lines as with the school choice. And then finally, KFA, open community use of school and recreational areas. It almost seemed like in that first bullet that the board was charged with the task of setting up recreational areas for the community, and they changed the wording on that, that you're not responsible for creating new space for community use, but if we have a designated area for recreational purposes, we work with the local community to allow them to do that. And that's been y'all's procedure for as long as I've been in the district. You want the community to be able to use the facilities whenever possible.
It says in there too that about us not being liable for accidents if people choose to come over and walk on the tracks and things like that. Do you think that will hold up if there was a problem, somebody tripped and there was a hole there or something like that?
As long as we don't have an unsafe condition, we would not be held liable. So if we had a walking track that was not fenced and there was a pothole in it and someone came after hours and was walking and they got hurt because of that pothole, it's on us because we knew that pothole was there, we should have fixed it. If there's not an unsafe condition and someone came and they just twisted their ankle because they, I don't know, their heel broke or something like that, that's not on us, that's on them.
Okay.
Now, what is an unsafe condition? Anybody can sue. We had, a few years ago, when I first got into the district, we had a case at West Oak High where somebody tripped over a speed bump that was intentionally placed in the road. Oh, is that an unsafe condition, or is that, you know, so.
We had one at Walhalla when I was the principal, where it stepped off the side.
Are there some legal precedents for what is and isn't unattractive nuisance, or whatever you want to call it?
Right,
Probably.
yeah, and we do, our maintenance department's great,
Yeah,
and
I
our
know.
schools report things
Yeah.
that are potentially unsafe conditions, and we get them fixed
Good.
pretty quickly. So I feel like our maintenance department does a great job staying on top of this to where I think the benefits of allowing the community to use our facilities outweigh the small risk we take in.
Okay. Any questions?
Okay, our final part, or my final part, is to talk about graduation location. And we, you know, for the last 2 years, we've had it on site at the schools. And honestly, we felt like that had worked well and was going good. And we felt sure that when we asked people about it, that's what they would tell us again. And we were somewhat surprised by the vote. And I know that you know, the district Twitter account is not the biggest cross-section of our population.
The margin of error is not
But,
real small.
but even if you do plus or minus 4 or 5%, which you typically see in a poll, there were 573 people that voted, and I know a lot of them were students because one of my own children's friends led the charge at Seneca High with the Twitter person. He said, "I have 2 words for you: air conditioning," and that was his campaign.
We
So
understand
we had
that. We were there
573
too.
people vote, and there was 73% to move it to Little John, 27% will leave it at the schools. I asked the high schools about polling their seniors, and the only one I got results from was West Oak High School. Mr. Kruzberger they did it during their tribe class, and it was like 90% Little John and 10%
We were
West Oak
shocked.
High.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had some conversation. The other wild card in this factor is we're doing our construction project at West Oak High, and I honestly, at first I thought I could tell you that it was going to be ready to stay in with. We've had to get pushed back because school facilities are not getting us the information we need in time. So I can't guarantee. In fact, I can probably tell you I'm almost positive it's not going to be ready the first part of June. So we need to take that into consideration as well as we do this. I went and met with the gentleman at Clemson University who is now in charge because the athletic department now controls the venue at Little John. And so you'll rent it from the athletic department. And in the past, we've budgeted around $16,000 for that, and I know that because that's the biggest part of my budget that Michael left me when he left, and it's all gone for graduation stuff, and this, we pay for sound and other things. It's going to be closer to $21,000 now for the one day on Saturday, June the 3rd. If we do that, we could have a We can do 9, 11:32, 8:30, 11, 1:30, however we do it. We figured we need about 2.5 hours to get it done, get people out, get the other folks in, and they'll take care of the things like they have in the past. But I know that there are some people who are passionate about having it at the schools, but we did hear through Facebook too, comments on there. The three main concerns were the heat, the fact that they were all at the same time, and folks who wanted to attend multiple graduations could not do so, and some people had to make a choice, and maybe a grandparent who had to choose, and that. And the other one that we heard a lot from was the folks with handicaps and handicap accessibility, handicap ability to see, get in there and get comfortable with people blocking them from the upper level where they were sitting and that.
And the heat probably affects those people sometimes
Yes.
more so
More so,
too.
and even if we moved it back to 8:30, the other wild card in this kind of thing is that
Could rain.
I can't quantify how much, yeah, that's true too, how many man hours we, as a maintenance department, put into preparing the fields and, being over there at 6:30 and, in the morning, wiping off seats, setting up chairs. You do it for practice, you take them down. You do it for practice, you take them down. Then you set them up for Saturday, then you take it down. So, in doing all that, I guess what I've got to recommend at this time is that we go to Littlejohn for this graduation. If we want to revisit it when we get back from West Oaks project and we see how it goes, then obviously we can do that. But for us to have a consistent place and for everybody to have the same opportunity, we need to move it back at this time. And we would
We
just,
asked and we heard.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you ask, they ought to listen.
well, maybe I want to ask him. I need to get, he's got it tentatively booked for us, so I will make the plans, and then what we'll do is we'll set the times, and I think I'm just going to draw them out of a hat since we're starting new, because everybody wants the early time. All three high schools want the early time, and we'll just do it that way, and then we'll start a rotation again if we continue to use that facility.
The district that was sharing the cost with us a little bit stopped doing that
They
a few
do.
years ago.
They don't, and when I asked about that, and they're not interested in coming back. They use Anderson Civic Center now, I think, and they seem to like that.
And we'll put this on the agenda for next week for an action item.
Sure.
Okay.
I just, is it okay for me to let folks know to make plans? I mean, so that the schools can,
Maybe we
I
could
think
sell
so.
tickets.
yeah. It'd be a good fundraiser. Thank you, that's it for our department.
Okay, Ms. Hopkins.
Well, as we discussed at the board retreat, I wanted to start getting some information about our programs in front of you, and I am delighted to introduce Lauren Harrison to you tonight. She is going to be speaking about the John Collins Thinking and Writing Program.
Good evening. Thanks for giving us a few minutes to talk about a program that I'm very excited to be working with. And we have a very special guest with us tonight, just by sheer coincidence of scheduling, and that's Henry Dembowski, who has been our independent writing consultant with the John Collins Thinking and Writing Program. So as I shared just a little bit about how we kind of came into this and the results that we're seeing, we'll have some questions at the end if you would like to ask the pro, because he's here and I'm just learning from the master. Okay. Really, why are we even talking about having a John Collins approach to writing? And, we've done a lot of instruction with writing over the years, but this approach really appeals to us because of the fact that writing is thinking, and we see that our students really need to think and express their thoughts through writing, and everything goes together in what they do. Our data analysis also has definitely identified a need for focused writing instruction connected to all subject area instruction. We want to make sure we are not seeing just assign and assess. We want to see true writing instruction taking place and teacher feedback and all of the things that go into great writing instruction. And another really nice point to this approach is that schools who are using this approach through their research have shown within 3 years of using this focused type of writing instruction with the same kind of terminology and the same consistency, really do see very positive results in students' writing abilities. This slide I actually took from the Collins Education Associate website, and I love it because I feel like it kind of gives us a quick overall view of the Collins writing approach. I call it the writing approach because writing instruction is writing instruction, and a lot of things stay the same, but then we have this wonderful new approach that we're using. And basically, it does blend all of the best practices. We're not throwing out the great writing instruction that's taken place in our schools. We're just kind of pulling it all together, making it all come together and see that we have a unified, flexible approach for teachers. As the ELA specialist, it really helps me to see how we are pulling that together, and we're seeing it from classroom to classroom. It does focus on thinking skills. One of the things that we have seen from teachers and heard from teachers is they've realized that maybe they were not giving as much attention to that thinking piece before the students actually started writing, making sure they had their ideas in mind so they could move forward with their writing. It does stress both teaching and using writing with a very strategic focus. Everything is integrated. We're talking about across all subject areas so that all teachers truly are teachers of writing, but within their subject area and within their content. And we do see a rise in student engagement and productivity. I've been into many classrooms when we've done demonstration lessons and have heard back from teachers and seen writing samples, and it's really great. And then over to the right side, you see the kind of the 3 F's for this: the frequency of writing experiences, focus on instruction, and feedback on strategic goals for you. Okay. So I took the liberty of taking some of those wonderful pictures that some of our schools have been sending us. These are our students and our examples of student writing in the presentation. When we began looking at this, we decided to, really have a very strategic plan, and I'll give Ms. Hopkins total credit for that because she knew what she was doing and really showed us how to implement this very successfully. We're not finished yet. We're still a work in progress. But we began our implementation approach by really bringing in the folks who would be making sure it was happening in our schools. So we did the administrator buy-in. All of them went through training. And Dr. Thorsland actually went through a professional development session with Henry as well. So from the top down, we had administrators participating in the training and really saying, yes, this is something that would be very successful in our schools. We have lead teachers in every one of our schools who actually help us with school-wide trainings. We have determined kind of the different phases of implementation, and as you may know, our Walhalla area schools were our phase 1, and now we are into the year 2, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a moment, but we're seeing that all of our schools have actually jumped on board in year 2, so that's exciting. And of course, we have ongoing support throughout the year. I'm becoming a little bit of a pro at writing support documents for it now and asking Henry questions. Okay. So on this slide, you actually see our phase 1 schools, which are now in year 2. I will tell you that 3 of our elementary schools met with us today and did folder reviews to look at examples of student writing, and it was a very successful experience, and now we can kind of go back and continue to build on that. We will meet with all of these schools throughout the year to show the administrators what to look for when they're meeting with their teachers and looking at student writing samples and portfolios. The rest of our schools are actually officially in year 1 now, or phase 2 schools. We initially talked about having a 3-year phase in, but we found that all of our schools were ready to jump on board. Let's just go. And we didn't want to hold them back. We wanted to move them forward as well. They wanted to get with it as well. Okay? So I wanted to talk just a couple of minutes about the professional development plan that we've done, because it's been very systematic and very planned and very intentional as we go through that. What you see there is a picture of some of our teachers in a professional development activity with Henry. And if you are visiting any of our schools, no doubt you will hear Henry's name. He's just Henry. We just all call him Henry now because he has become very well known for his energy, and I'm still learning from him. But what we start off with, as I mentioned earlier, the administrator buy-in. All of our principals, our assistant principals, everybody was trained during that 2015-16 school year. Now, we've had some shifts in leadership at the school level since then, so, we're just kind of filling in the gaps with some of our assistant principals this year, making sure that everyone is very familiar with the program. We have worked with our reading coaches and our media specialists on how they can support the classroom teachers in helping our students to become better writers using these practices. And we have held multiple sessions for our teachers, and it's not just teachers, we're talking about instructional aides being a part of it. We've even had speech pathologists in training, counselors, teachers of all areas, so it's been really great. All right, so I used the same picture again, but just to tell you a little bit about numbers, for the folks who are really interested in numbers, we have had over 391 current faculty, staff, and administration trained in the program. We have 8 folks who participated in the professional development, but have left the district. We heard of one of those today who moved due to a family situation, but she left behind a wonderful legacy by working with her fellow math teachers, and those folks are just rocking right along with it, so we're really pleased with that. We also, we've done plenty of trainings in the past, but we have quite a few people employed in our district, so it takes quite a bit of time to get everyone to the same level of knowledge with it.
Right.
So we've also included into our schedule this year 6 more initial professional development sessions with Henry, and 3 of those actually were held in August. We've had full day trainings with them, and again, we'll continue that throughout the school year. And I'm stepping in as needed to do that as well, because I've spent a lot of time with this program. Not only do we have the one-day initial training that our teachers are participating in and learning strategies they can take back and use in their classrooms immediately, we have also built in advanced training sessions, thankfully through your generosity with Summer Institute sessions. We do a lot during Summer Institute, but as well throughout the year during our in-service days. We've had over 91 people who have participated in advanced training sessions, either as lead teachers or just, I want to know more, I want to get deeper with this. So we're really proud of that, and you see all the different groups that have gone through that training. Okay, and then beyond that, we have what I like to call our ongoing professional development. We have our lead teachers, our reading coaches, even our administrators in many cases who are teaching sessions at the school level. And it might be after school mini sessions, just refreshers on things, or having groups of teachers get together and really work on the writing instruction together and learn together. So that's been wonderful. We have had after school faculty meetings with Henry. So if teachers come and have questions, they can kind of have a question and answer session with him. We have also brought him in, and will continue to do so this year, into our instructional leaders meetings to help our instructional leaders make sure they are providing that support, and that it's kind of consistent throughout our district. And I mentioned earlier we had the first of our 3 folder review sessions today, and looking forward to the other 2. The next one is a personal thing of project of mine, because we have used Canvas to share our classroom lessons that we video when Henry comes to town. So we're almost making him an Oconee County resident, because we use him so much in our schools, but it's wonderful because teachers can come in, they can ask him questions on the spot, but then we can video it with our technology and share that through our internal website and Canvas, and teachers really are watching those videos, and they're coming and asking much deeper level questions for us now. So I think that's a big success. And so we're working on ways we can just kind of continue to build that and make that accessible to teachers. We have, I believe, over 54 lessons now, and we were in 7 classes today, I think another 6 tomorrow at West Oak High School, and then Blue Ridge Elementary for 2 days later this week. So very excited about that as well. And then we have created resources just from what we've learned with the program and how we want to look in Oconee County. And so you see a listing of all the different things that we have there, really using our Canvas learning management system to make sure all of that is very accessible for teachers. And it just continues to grow. Okay, so I wanted to share just a couple of little testimonials, which I call praise for the program. So we'll just take a look at a couple of those. This first one is from a teacher, I won't read it verbatim to you, but this is actually from a parent who is also a teacher, and I loved getting this email from her about her teenage son. And she says, it's just difficult to get him excited about things, but that night he came home and he talked about Henry and talked about, they were having discussions over type 2 and type 3 writing in the evening, and she was very impressed that we had impressed him. So that was nice. And then the second one is actually from a teacher in our district, where we're seeing in a year 2 school, we're seeing changes in, in the students' writing ability coming to them. So that's wonderful, because that is helping students be successful in all areas. And that's what we want. That's where we want to go with this. I can say as an employee of the school district, and also as a parent of an employee of the school district, of a teacher, we have conversations about writing at home. And that's always nice to kind of make sure that my child's doing what she needs to as a teacher too. That's great.
Can I give another testimonial?
Yes, sir.
My daughter was in one of the elementary schools that worked on this last year, and she's no longer in elementary school, but she was last year. And Henry was in her room, and I knew, so I came home and I asked her, how the John Collins lesson went. And when she was describing Henry, she just said, he's mean. So, now, I will clarify, because I talked and wanted to get to the meaning behind that. But the bottom line is, Henry has very high expectations, and this program teaches our teachers to have high expectations and expect a lot out of the students. So she was interpreting, not taking no for an answer, and Henry doesn't take no for an answer. He keeps pushing and keeps pushing and keeps pushing, teachers and students alike, until they're producing what he wants. And, of course, her interpretation was he was mean, but it was just that he was expecting a lot. So, and I do think
Boston accent.
maybe it might have had some of that.
We have to translate occasionally for the Boston accent, Wahala, but he's getting it, we're getting him, so that works out really nicely. But yes, we see that a lot. So if you talk to him and he asks you what you're thinking, be prepared to tell him what you're thinking, because I don't know will not be an acceptable answer, or I'm not thinking anything.
Lauren, I'm just
Yes.
wondering, there's such a close relationship between writing and reading, or reading and writing.
Absolutely.
Is it too early to know whether there's an effect on reading skills yet?
Data-wise, I'm not sure, of the correlation at this point, but everything that we're doing is focusing on integrating that, because for too long in education, we've seen things become compartmentalized, and we realize, everything we're doing, in the John Collins program, we're looking at reading response journals, and those are nonfiction articles for social studies, science, whatever, content area you're dealing with. We're looking at poetry journals, we're looking at math journals. So there's so much reading going on that is a part of the program. It's reading, thinking, and writing. I feel like cross
But
country.
Henry wanted to add something.
Come on up here.
There is a woman named Dr. Maria Grasso O'Neill who works at the Harvard Principal Center, and she wanted to do her dissertation on the Collins Writing Program, and to see whether or not after 3 years she would have the growth that we say you will have. And what she discovered in her research and in her thesis was that the reading scores went up with the writing scores. And the program is the way we speak is the way we write, and the more we speak and the more we write is the way we read. And so we have the students read their work. If you watch any of the videos, you will say, I say to the students, read that to me, read that back to me. Because it's all tied together very closely. So it's speaking, reading, writing. You can't do one without the other.
Communication.
Absolutely. So we thought, we have many wonderful videos that you're welcome to view anytime on Canvas. Like I said, we tried to organize them really well. But originally Ginger had asked me for, what are some of the highlight videos? Well, that was tough, because I watched them multiple times to make sure I covered them on all levels. But this is a lesson that I particularly liked, and I'm just going to show you a little snippet at the end of it. But it's also one of Henry's as well, and it was at Walhalla Middle School. We did a band lesson.
Just remember that there were no R's in the Boston area.
No, I'm just going to go to the student reading. So if you'll click to the next one and click on that link, and we'll go back. It's gonna be the whole video, so we need to pull to 30 minutes.
Oh,
Oh, is it not?
this lady's fabulous. This
Oh,
band
she
teacher.
is.
Unbelievable.
I hired her.
It was the first time in 22 years that somebody in the arts department asked me to teach a writing lesson.
She's brilliant. She is.
Okay, close back in there.
She was so
It might not let us in. I had a technology issue with this earlier, and it's still not doing it. But I can send that to you as well. But basically, Ms. Turpin, who is the band teacher, asked her students to write, 6th grade students, to write a letter to 5th grade students on the benefits of becoming a member of band. And this particular student just did a beautiful job. The vocabulary was amazing, and it was really great to watch that come alive. And it was clear also how much they loved their band teacher. So that was also really nice, as well as what they learned. So anyhow, I will get that to you. I apologize for that. For some reason, our swivel link is not connecting right now. Do you have any questions for Henry or myself?
Why didn't we do it sooner?
No, we're all on board now. Well, I look
Thank
forward
you.
to giving you updates later when we see more and more positive results from it.
Thank you.
Well, and I
Thank
can
you.
tell you, many of our art teachers and music teachers that are in the room are incorporating the John Collins work in their programs too. I've had the pleasure of observing that, so they all know Henry.
Henry, we appreciate you being with us too. Thank you.
Nice job.
So assessment update was actually a separate topic for tonight, but there isn't a whole lot to say. We do have some data coming out, and actually the State Department had indicated that we were going to be getting some results today that we didn't see. Did you see them?
Last I heard, no.
So we're hoping to see some test results in the next weeks. SC Ready results should be out toward the end of the month, and so we'll update those with you. We've looked at some of the ROD data, and we think we know where that's going, but we haven't gotten official data on that yet. There are some changes to the testing program, minor changes so far this year that really deal with the high school level, and that has to do with the end of course test being the federally approved test now for accountability. And we've been getting some messages from the State Department, and then they rethink things, and we get some more messages about who needs to participate and all of that. So just stay tuned.
So with our SC Ready, the data we've gotten, we can tell how we did as far as our students that met expectation, didn't meet expectation, that. But, and those scores are not as high as we like, but it's still hard to evaluate our performance as a district when we can't compare it to other districts, and we don't have any other district data yet, so it's very difficult to
And we
make.
can't compare it to last year because last year was
It's a
ACT
different test.
Aspire, so it's just really, all we can do is kind of compare ourselves to ourselves.
But we
right
do
now.
anticipate having a couple of reports for you in October if the dates that the State Department has published are accurate.
And I will apologize because there will probably be some press releases prior to the October board meetings. We'll keep going on that. So we have just a few policies from instruction to put in front of you tonight. The first one is a social studies policy, and it really is incorporating some new legislation from the state, that there are some things that we need to make sure are incorporated into high school social studies instruction. So you can see in here the Federalist Papers, the structure of government, the role of separation of powers, those kinds of things. And so we of course, will have a curriculum framework that supports that.
And that's state legislature passing laws that say you have to do this. So,
Also
no
from...
minority.
Also from legislation, health education, if you'll scroll up a little bit, Gloria, if you can, they added the life-saving techniques because what they're requiring now at the high school level is that all high school students have a course in learning experience in CPR and AED. And so that has to happen once in the student's high school program, and it has to happen by folks that are appropriately certified to do that. So of course we will incorporate that as well. We're looking at how to do that. I think at the same time we know that there are new comprehensive health standards that are supposed to be released this month, and so I have planned with the the health teachers and PE teachers last year to spend a week with them revising our curriculum at the end of this month, early in October. We'll go ahead and incorporate that CPR stuff into our program. But again, that's a mandated piece, and so that is really the change to the comprehensive health or the health education bit here. And then the next one is special education programs for disabled students, and this is a very minor revision. It really is just responding to the federal update, federal legislation revision, and just the reference is really the dates and the updated policies or legislation there. And then lastly, I think I have two more yet. Comparability of services is, again, it looks like a lot. I think it's next one. It looks like a lot when you look at this policy, but really this is it's just putting into words what we already do, and that has to do with making sure that we provide fair and equitable resources to the schools, whether it be staffing or supplies and those kinds of things. And the teachers in the room can tell you we are very careful to allocate by formula and do those kinds of things. And Stan keeps me in line. He makes sure that those allocations come out, and we make sure that stuff happens. So that policy is just documenting that. And then the state program assessments, we actually really simplified this one. The proposed language from legal counsel had lots of specifics about this test or that test, but they keep changing it so much that we just thought it was a whole lot easier to just say, we're just going to do what the law says we have to do. And so that's really what this policy says here. And I respectfully submit those to you, and I guess we'll talk about those next time as well. Do you have any questions on any of the policies or anything else that we've talked about tonight?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Wade?
Okay, there are some G policies, so I don't want you to think there's no changes in personnel. But because they deal with personnel issues, we're having the attorneys review to make sure that they are indeed policies that we want to implement. One, I think Kathy Mahoney shared at the School Board Association meeting about whether or not you want to have a hearing officer, and she's getting some information for me to share with you guys about that. So I will bring that hopefully as soon as she gets those to us. What I'd like to share with you tonight, Gloria, that is right at the top, because Rebecca was pulling these numbers to make sure they were accurate up until today. I'd like to give you just a view of how we look by departments and schools, where our employees actually work in the schools or in departments. While we may have some folks home-based different places, I just want to show you where we are and how departments may have changed and how schools may have changed. This goes back to 2014-15 because I wanted to show where the numbers have changed, mainly where we switched some departments and added employees, and show where we've taken some things away. If you look like at assessment and research, that was a position in instruction, but now they're all under one category, and Ginger can tell you a little more about that, but they're all under instructional services. So that's why that's 0. It doesn't mean that person went away. We will also look at some of the numbers at the schools later, just to talk about those that have big changes, like Tomasa Sela Middle and High. You're going to see 0 there because those teachers went somewhere else. But just to point out a few things, family literacy, you'll see in 2014 there were 3. Those employees actually ended up being included with adult ed numbers because they're at Code Learning Center. Then federal programs, that person would actually still be working in instruction but a different title. Financial services, that is where, Gloria, you should have one person that's different there. Is that kind of correct? Yes. Another point, just a point of looking at instructional services, it went from 5 to 19, so that was where we combined it. Special services and assessment and research, federal programs, they all became one.
Rather than having separate budgets, we put those budgets together under one roof, essentially.
But now currently there are 13
13 individuals that work in the district office here. Another one to point out, again, you see special services 0, which is now under instruction. If we look at the schools, you'll see Fair Oak went from 58 to 75, and that's with adding Oakway. The Oakway staff went to Fair Oak. Ravenel, there was a slight change there because some new programs went there. We've moved some special ed programs, and added some other programs there, so you'll see a slight increase there. If you look at Tomasi Salem Mill and High, that's now 0. Those employees went mainly to Walhalla High School. In Walhalla Middle, you'll see we're up to 128 at Walhalla High School from 115, and Walhalla Middle School 80 to 94. Westminster L had a slight decrease. Their special ed program, I know, went to Ravenel. But you will see consistently at this time of the year when we pull the numbers, now these numbers may change throughout the year based on if we add any new staff, but just at this time of the year, we're pretty much consistent with the number of employees. And one thing I like to point out is that we continue to have less than 10%. So 7% of our employees work at the district level, and 92 work at the school level. So I think that's showing how we are committed to making sure that we have more of our staff at the schools as opposed to the district office. We're working harder and sharing many hats so that we can support the schools, and that's what we really want to do. We want to be able to show that we're supporting the schools in their needs and whatever they may need. So, any questions? Or?
I'm interested in, just curious, really, Seneca High had an 8 employee increase.
This would have been due to their student enrollment going up and the number of FTEs added there. Is that correct, Steve? With the they had a cut the year before.
Right, they had gone down and
They graduated a small class,
Right.
and they have a
And
large
now
freshman.
they've gone back up. So that's why Seneca is up by 8.
He also changed how he did some of his FTEs for, instead of using one full FTE for a certified person, he might have used it for 2 classified and divided up that way, so that contributed to as well. I know he did that in 2 instances.
Right. So, but I just thought it would be good for you to know when we say that there is special services has 0, but it's under instruction, assessment, and where those changes, how those came about, and where our employees are. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any questions? Okay. Well, that concludes most of our meeting for tonight. We need a motion to go into executive session for employment recommendations and changes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session for employment recommendations and changes.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank y'all again for being with us, and I apologize that you might get wet, it sounds like, when you go out.
Yeah.